Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into the source material to really unpack a symbol that's incredibly sacred, but also, let's be honest, really misunderstood. We're talking about the Shivalingam. So, what is the Shivalingam? I mean, for millions of people, it's this deeply revered abstract form of God. But for a lot of others, the meaning gets tied to something, well, something way more controversial. And that's exactly where we're going to start, right at the heart of the confusion. Okay, so this right here, this quote is from a pretty well-known English translation of the Shiva Purana, and you can see why it's so jarring. This is the kind of line that gets passed around as the smoking gun, the definitive proof that the lingam is, well, what it appears to be to some. And this very translation is the central point of the whole debate our source material wants to clear up. Yeah, so as you can imagine, an interpretation like that has caused a ton of debate. So our source material says, hold on a second. To get to the real story, we can't just stick with this one translation. We have to rewind. We have to go way back to the original language, and this is the key part, the philosophy that gave birth to the symbol in the first place. And that's the whole argument here. To really get it, we can't start with translations from the last century. No, we have to go back like thousands of years back to the foundational philosophical texts of Hinduism. These are known as the darshans, and this is where the word linga actually gets its original technical meaning. All right, so let's do it. Let's dive right into that foundational concept. What did linga actually mean in these ancient philosophical systems, long before any of this controversy? So you look at a text like the Vaiseshika Sutra, and we're talking about something from around 500 BC, maybe even earlier, and the definition is crystal clear. A linga is a sign. It's a mark, an indicator. It's a clue that lets you figure out something else is there, plain and simple. Notice what's missing? Anything to do with anatomy. And here's a perfect way to think about it. It's all about logic. You see smoke rising in the distance. The smoke is the linga. It's the sign, the effect. And because you see the smoke, you can infer that there's a fire, the lingi, the cause, even if you can't see the flames. It's that simple. One thing pointing to another. And here's another really important point the source brings up. The word linga wasn't even an exclusively masculine term in these texts, not at all. For example, in the Vamana Purana, the goddess Saraswati is described in the form of a linga. Now that really reinforces this idea that it's a universal term for a sign or a symbol, right? Okay, so this leads us to the big question. If linga just means sign, then what is the Shiva lingam a sign of? What is it pointing to? And to answer that, we have to go right to the source of the debate itself, the Shiva Purana. And what's amazing is that the text doesn't beat around the bush. It gives us a direct definition. Right there in chapter 5 of the Koti Rudra Samhita, it says the linga is the formless form of Shiva. Think about that. It's a symbol for something that has no form, no attributes, no shape. And it's not like this is just a throwaway line. The scripture says it, and then it says it again. Just 10 verses later, boom, the same idea is repeated. It's clearly reinforcing this central point. The linga represents the abstract, the formless nature of the divine. And just in case you missed it, it comes up again towards the end of the chapter. It's really hammering the point home. The source we're looking at argues that this isn't an accident. This repetition is totally deliberate to make it 100% clear that we're talking about a philosophical symbol, not a physical representation. Okay, so now that we have that foundation, let's circle back to that really controversial chapter we started with, because this is where it gets wild. Our source material shows how two different translators looking at the exact same Sanskrit words can come up with two completely different stories. I mean, just look at the chapter titles themselves. It's night and day. On one hand, you have a traditional translation talking about the appearance and glory of the Hatakeshwar lingam. Sounds pretty sacred, right? Then you look at the other one, and it's called The Reason for Shiva's Assuming the Phallic Form. Whoa. The entire story is framed in a certain way before you even read a single word. And this is the exact line where everything goes off the rails. The original Sanskrit says Shiva is holding a Tejomai linga. Now, Tejomai means brilliant, fiery, full of light, so a brilliant symbol. The other translation takes that same phrase and turns it into holding his penis. I mean, the difference is, it's not subtle. It changes the entire meaning of the story. But wait, there's more. The source argues there's another whole layer of misunderstanding happening here, and it comes from taking two other really important philosophical terms, purusha and yoni, and translating them in a super literal anatomical way. So let's start with purusha. In Vedic philosophy, this word does not just mean man or male. It's this huge, deep, metaphysical concept. It represents pure consciousness itself, the passive, universal spirit that just witnesses everything. And in the same way, the source explains that yoni isn't what a literal translation might suggest. In this context, it means prakriti, primordial nature. It's the cosmic womb, the active, creative energy that brings the entire universe into being. Okay, so this quote from Swami Karpatriji really brings it all together. He's basically saying, let's think about this logically. The story says this Tejomai Linga, this brilliant fiery symbol, becomes unstable. So how would you contain a cosmic fire? The idea that a physical body part could do it just doesn't make sense. But the idea that primordial nature, the yoni, would provide the foundation for cosmic consciousness, the linga, well, that makes perfect philosophical sense. So after all that, what's the big takeaway? Let's boil down the core argument our source material has been building. Okay, so it really comes down to a few key things. First, the word linga has a very old, very specific philosophical meaning. It's a sign. Second, the Shiva Purana itself says over and over that the lingam is a symbol for the formless form of God. Third, you've got these huge concepts, Purusha and Yoni, which are about cosmic principles, not human bodies. So the confusion really kicks in when these deep philosophical ideas get a flat, literal translation that rips them out of their original context. And you know, all of this leaves us with a much bigger question, doesn't it? This isn't really just about one symbol. It's about how we read and understand any ancient text. It makes you wonder, how much of the original, subtle, profound meaning gets lost when we try to cram these huge ancient ideas into our modern language and our modern way of seeing the world?